Season 4, Episode 5 could very possibly be one of my favorite episodes in this show. In this episode, we had Nolan coming back to Earth. His return forced us to confront a very morally loaded question. Should Nolan be forgiven? Today we're going to be stepping into the roles of judge, jury, and executioner regarding the crimes of Nolan Grayson, aka Omni-Man.
Here are the crimes of Nolan Grayson, betrayer of the Viltrum Empire. This trial is to determine whether he should be forgiven. I shall now be listing the crimes of said defendant. He murdered thousands of people.
That was your fault. Your stubbornness against the inevitable killed those people.
Massacred the Guardians of the Globe. Prepared Earth for the conquest of the Viltrum Empire.
I'm from the planet Viltrum. My government sent me here to help protect the people of your world.
Attempted to take over Earth for the Viltrum Empire.
By the time I was born, Viltrum was already the greatest empire in our galaxy. We decided to make it the only empire in our galaxy.
Had a kid with Andressa, which led to the murder of thousands of Thraxans.
Mark,
Who is that?
this is your little brother.
You barely touch them, and they die.
And beat his son within an inch of his life while using his body as a battering ram to kill innocent civilians.
Damn it!
Prior to coming to Earth, he decimated alien civilizations and enslaved them.
It was hard, but I believe in our cause. Some species resisted, of course, but no one could withstand us for long.
And he signed out the Thraxans with the devious intentions.
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer.
The facts of his crimes are not in dispute. We are here to solely argue their moral weight. Counsel, opening statements. Prosecution, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to bring up Art Rosenbaum. Art's perspective on Nolan pretty much sums it up for the general public and humanity as a whole. Nolan was a person they once trusted, and after what he did, they're just all scared of him. Consider Art Rosenbaum, a man who counted Nolan as a close friend for years. When Nolan recently returned and visited him, Mr. Rosenbaum's singular focus was simply surviving the encounter. A man who once called him a friend was now someone he feared for his life. And when Nolan seemed to expect things to feel normal, like old times, Mr. Rosenbaum's response said everything.
I dress heroes, Nolan.
I dress heroes, Nolan. That sentence is the verdict of the public. Every good deed, every life saved, every friendship built, all of it erased. Not diminished, but erased completely, because none of it was real in the way they believed it was. This scene ultimately showed the reality to Nolan that nothing will go back to the way it was before. This ultimately aligns with Nolan's dilemma. Can his actions be forgiven given his circumstances? It could be argued that deceiving someone is worse than doing something evil, because deceit involves gaining the trust and loyalty, then purposefully betraying them in order to achieve a goal. It involves countless lies and the knowledge that your actions are ultimately going to lead to some sort of betrayal for the people that believed in you. Oliver tells Nolan during episode 6 that Conquest is hated almost as much as Nolan. Keyword almost. Conquest in this case would be the evil and Nolan would be the deceiver. Nolan deceiving Earth is seen as more negatively by the people of Earth. Based on what Oliver says, even though they both killed a lot of people, even if Nolan saved many more, his deceit is seen more negatively than the evil act by Conquest. Nolan's change of pace is only to minimize the damage his actions had on his relationships, not because he actually believed that what he did was wrong. The defense will call this a transformation, but we call it consequence management. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the crimes happened. We do not contest that. But this court is not being asked whether Nolan Grayson committed crimes. It is being asked whether he deserves forgiveness. And those are different questions because forgiveness is not a verdict on the act. It is a verdict on the person. And for that, you need to understand the person. Nolan's perspective is the hardest to understand. His position is this. He's lived thousands of years, knowing nothing but the Viltrumite way. On his 18th birthday, both of his parents attempt to kill him. A little bit after that, 99% of the Viltrumite species are wiped out. So he's clearly been through a lot. But the thing is, Nolan doesn't really feel the emotional weight of these things because it's all he knows. You can even see how blank and plain his expressions are as he's dumping dead Viltrumite bodies. Then he goes to Earth. There are several scenes which show how he changes from having a family. At the beginning, when he arrives and meets Cecil, he is very serious and shows no emotion. In the Adam Eve special, we see Mark as the duct tape man, and Nolan has a very conflicted expression. Where it looks like he wants to just kill them, but then he feels ashamed he even thought of something like that. And the most memorable one, this scene plays.
What are you doing?
This is a waste of everyone's time. There's so much more I could be doing right now.
Look at Mark.
Strike one.
Shows us what life is all about. This is humanity.
Come on, Mark!
Go!
Go, Mark, go! Safe! Yeah, I saw.
Debbie brings so much change in him and teaches him to care and feel emotions. The conflict going on in Nolan's head must be tearing him apart. Omni-Man is torn between worlds, and he belongs to neither. As a wise Redditor once said, Omni-Man is too Viltrumite for Earth, but Nolan is too human for Viltrum. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I would like to begin with the most important person that this court should be centering around, above all else, Debbie Grayson. This is single-handedly the most important perspective to answer, because we know that there's no way the rest of the world would ever trust him again. However, that poses the question whether Debbie would accept him, because she knew him better than anyone else. She was deceived the most, and it's clear from her reaction to Nolan that she doesn't have the same perspective as the rest of the world. She has no fear for her life when around him. Argus wanted to survive his encounter with Nolan, but she is incredibly frustrated with him for being who he was and partly blames herself for not being able to change him. To Debbie, the betrayal changed the way that she viewed Nolan. For her, he was the man she fell in love with and the father of her son. Him acting so differently shattered the image that she originally had of Nolan himself and her ruined life. To her, his apology was merely like rubbing salt on her wounds. After all that mental turmoil that she went through, how dare he come back and apologize like that was ever gonna change anything? Even more so, how dare he apologize after being with another woman and having a child with her? Nolan, having a child with Andressa, heavily devalues his apology to Debbie, because this was supposedly after he changed. While you might argue that Nolan's apology was very heartfelt and sincere, I think that it was misguided, because while in the apology he was remorseful, he wasn't remorseful that he slaughtered thousands using his son's body or that he hooked up with the insect woman. Rather, he was sad that his actions destroyed his relationship with Debbie. because during this period of self-reflection, he realized how much he really loved her. Most of the ideals that Nolan originally had were imparted not by himself but from the Empire and his people. This love that he experienced for Debbie and Mark was the only thing that was truly his. To him, the lives that he took during the fight were unimportant. After all, in his 2,000 years of living, he was a conqueror who wiped out civilizations casually. That is not the foundation for forgiveness. That is the foundation for pity. And pity, Your Honor, is not the same thing. Nothing further.
Let us talk about Mark, because Mark Grayson is the most important perspective in this entire proceeding, primarily in Season 4, that while Mark doesn't forgive his father at all, he has come to terms with what has happened and is willing to work together with him. A major factor in this decision, I believe, stems from the fact that he experienced the other Viltrumites, such as Conquest and Anissa, and has people to make a comparison between them, showcasing how sincere Nolan was being compared to the very bloodthirsty and evil people of his race. Compared to Debbie, who is only aware of Nolan, while the public are also only aware of Omni-Man, Mark has a deep understanding of both sides of the story. This is an important factor when considering everyone's perspectives, because unlike Mark, most people only know how evil Nolan is. They don't see how sick Conquest is, and how evil Anissa and the other Viltrumites are, for them to understand who the Viltrumites are and why Nolan did what he did. Even Debbie hasn't seen Conquest and other Viltrumites like Mark has, so Mark can understand Nolan's perspective better and see how Viltrum shaped who he was. Mark is slowly warming up to his father because of this. He is able to work with him because he knows what his father went through. Next, I would like to talk about Thetis. Thetis is important in this discussion because he betrayed the Viltrum Empire too. And from episode 7 of season 4, we have some details on why he betrayed the Viltrum Empire. Play the clip.
Thetis and I fought side by side at Capita Minor. He was the strongest among our company, the most ruthless. Yet ever since he returned from his years in the Ley Quadrant, he speaks of mercy and questions our ways. It is troubling.
He had a point of comparison, just like Nolan. He might not have had an entire family like Nolan did, but seeing another civilization for some time brought a change in him. Thetis couldn't tell the Viltrum Empire was evil until after he spent time there. This clearly shows that for a Viltrumite to change, they need to have spent time with another civilization.
Your Honor, I'd like to bring up the Immortal, the only surviving member of the Guardians of the Globe that Omni-Man killed. He's lived for thousands of years and has served the human race faithfully, witnessing the rise and fall of countless civilizations, enduring centuries of work for the betterment of his people. A man who's outlived everyone he knew. He was famously Abraham Lincoln, arguably one of the greatest presidents of America. He is the one strongest, second to only Omni-Man. During the beginning of season 1, he ruled the earth to the best of his abilities for centuries later, and recognizing his declining abilities, he bravely asked to be killed so he did not harm anyone else. We should definitely explore his perspective.
Argument dismissed. No one really cares. Moving on, even the perspectives presented by both the prosecution and defense, I'll be deciding on final verdict.
So, while the judge is making a decision given the case, we can discuss how the show will progress. For some background information, as someone who's read the comics, I believe that the comics will have no influence in the decision between whether Debbie forgives Nolan or not. In the comics, Nolan and Debbie have one argument after he returns, and then 2 issues later, Debbie and Nolan suddenly just get back together and leave Earth. The thing with this is that Debbie and Nolan getting back together is not too important to the actual storyline that Invincible goes into. So that makes it pretty easy for the show to go in either direction, and they can transform Debbie's character from the comics to the show. So to be clear, the comics will probably have no influence on whether Debbie gets back with Nolan. Personally, I believe that Debbie won't be getting back together with Nolan for several reasons. First of all, story-wise, it would be easier and it would be received well from the fans, mainly because all the things that Debbie has experienced has built her character up, and her current relationship with Paul. These are investments that the show previously made, so it would make the most sense that they go in this direction so that the previous efforts aren't in vain. There's nothing wrong with Paul, and he's been a great person. If Debbie were to leave Paul for Nolan, it would seem like a complete character assassination for Debbie. Even after Nolan's apology, we see no conflict in Debbie since she immediately spends a full day with Paul. So, unless they write Nolan's have the most incredible and convincing apology and turnaround, the easy route is for Debbie to not get with Nolan.
I think an important part to consider is Nolan and Andressa. We get more context on Nolan's relationship with Andressa in episode 6, where Nolan explains to Oliver that he loved Andressa as well and credits Andressa with saving his life. He also explains how his apology was just a stupid and desperate attempt at reconciling with Debbie. This is important because previously we just saw Nolan's apology as honest and heartfelt, but Nolan now clears things up by saying it's more complicated than that and he wasn't being completely truthful. This kind of devalues Nolan's apology because Andressa is still important to him and she is someone he loves, just that Nolan missed Debbie more. The weakest point of Nolan's entire apology is that he changed, but then he still had a child with Andressa while he was in the process of changing for the better. Though Andressa can also be considered as a way for Nolan to have changed, because Nolan was completely lost until Andressa helped him. We have determined that Debbie will not get back with Nolan with the information we have so far, but there is more to the question, due to there being more ways to express forgiveness than Debbie just getting back together with Nolan. One narrative possibility for the show is that Nolan continues redeeming himself and performing good deeds, not for the reason of wanting to be forgiven, but because it's the right thing to do. Then, a season or two later, Debbie recognizes that Nolan has changed, and though she is still unable to get back with him because of what he did, and being too far in her relationship with Paul, she accepts his apology, and that gives Nolan closure. But we've only addressed how the plot might move on. We still haven't answered whether Nolan deserves forgiveness. So let's go back to the judge.
The court finds that no clean verdict is available today and rules that the absence of one is itself the most truthful outcome. Usually, circumstances don't excuse the actions, but in this case, I feel like it's a bit different for Nolan. Because Nolan doesn't know anything else until he goes through it. He doesn't know emotions, he doesn't have relationships. He only knows his purpose, and that is to conquer. Nolan won't get any forgiveness because no one else knows his perspective except Mark. But whether he deserves it, it's different. To put things into perspective based on the information we are presented, while everyone deserves a chance to become a better person, becoming better doesn't mean that you're forgiving. So Nolan doesn't deserve forgiveness, but that doesn't mean that he can't spend the rest of his life working to redeem himself. So in summary, he deserves redemption but not forgiveness. The crimes are documented, change is documented, the pain is documented, what remains is time, and what Nolan doesn't with that time. Court is adjourned.